We are now in 7-5, which is decimals and fractions.
Use at least one decimal and one fraction to represent the quantity shown in 4 new and different ways. Tell whether one of these representations is more useful than the others and why.
Here are some possible solutions to our launch problem if you want to read through them and get a better understanding of what the launch problem was asking. Moving on to part 1.
You can use what you know about the word form of numbers to write decimals as fractions. Use the least place, tenths, to write this decimal as a fraction. Then simplify if possible. The decimal 0.6 can be written as the fraction 3/5.
So the word form of 0.6 is 0 and 6/10 or just 6/10.
Use the least place, hundredths, to write this decimal as a fraction. Then simplify if possible. The decimal 0.24 can be written as the fraction 6/25. The word form of 0.24 is 0 and 24 hundredths, or just 24 hundredths. Use the least place, thousands, to write this decimal as a fraction. Then simplify if possible. The decimal 0.225 can be written as the fraction 9/40. The word form of 0.225 is 0 and 225 thousandths, or just 225 thousandths.
I can take how you say it in order to make a fraction. So 225 thousandths, if I know that it ends in the thousandth place, I know that 1,000 is going to be in my denominator. Then we simplify.
Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, surrounding the Kennedy Space Center, is a sanctuary for green turtles, bald eagles, Florida panthers, and hundreds of other animals. About 0 and 625 thousandths of the total area of the refuge is water. What fraction of the total area is water?
So what I want to think about is the decimal that they gave me, 0.625. So they already read it in the problem, but how you read it is 625 thousandths. It's important to know your place values and to know that this is in the thousandths place. If I want to know what it is as a fraction, I can simply take 625 and I would write it over 1,000. So 625 thousandths. So I'm writing 625 over 1,000. What we then want to do is simplify. 625 and 1,000 can both be divided by 125. If you didn't know this, you can choose a lower number. Maybe you said that they can both be divided by 25. Start with that. You'll just have to simplify more times. So 625 divided by 125 is 5. And if I did 1,000 divided by 125, that would give me 8. 5/8 is the simplified version of 625 over 1,000. And that is how we get the correct answer.
Virginia has a land and water area that is about 11 thousandths of the total area of the United States. What fraction of the total area of the United States does Virginia make up?
So this is our part 1 got it problem, and you are going to write whether you think it's 11 tenths, 11 100ths, 11 thousandths, or 11 10,000ths. Me saying those answers should probably give you a very helpful hint. The correct answer is C, 11 thousandths. So up here we read it as 11 thousandths. This fraction we read as 11 thousandths.
You can use what you know about fractions and division to write fractions as decimals. Write 3/4 as a decimal. The fraction bar means divide. Write the fraction as division. Place a decimal point in the dividend and write a 0 to the right of the decimal point as a placeholder. Begin dividing, writing a 0 in the ones place of the quotient as a placeholder and placing the decimal point in the quotient. Write another 0 in the dividend as a placeholder so that you can complete the division. So 3/4 equals 75 hundredths.
So again, we are taking the top number divided by the bottom number, and our answer will be in decimal form. Moving on to part 2, we want to practice what we learned in our key concept. So we're taking top number divided by bottom number. So if I take 1, I'm doing A, and divide it by 2, 2 cannot go into 1. So what I have to do is add a decimal point and a 0. The reason why I add the decimal point is because I don't want to add a 0 and make it 10 divided by 2 because that's a whole new problem. Adding the decimal point and a 0 does not change this value, so I still have 1 divided by 2. This time I can figure out how many times does 2 go into 10, and it goes in 5 times. Notice I put my 5 above the 0. That's very important to line it up. I subtract 10. I have nothing left, and my decimal point goes straight up. So my answer is going to be 0.5, or 0 and 5 tenths. What I would like you to do is I would like you to try B and C, and then I will show you the answers to those very soon. If you did B and you did 3 divided by 8, you had to add a decimal point and a few zeros after it. 8 can go into 30 3 times, and we subtract. This is our standard long division. And in our answer, that decimal point goes straight up. That's why it's super important to make sure all of these numbers are lined up properly. So your final answer of 3/8 equals what as a decimal? It equals 375 thousandths. Part C is saying 29 over 40, or 29 40ths, divided out would equal 725 thousandths. You can pause the videos and work through these, but I am going to move on. In this got it problem for part 2, we're going to use division to write 3/5 as a decimal, and these are your answer choices. D is the correct answer. 3 divided by 5 will give you 6 tenths. This is the second got it problem in part 2. How can you write 3/5 as a decimal without using division? Here is an answer to this got it problem. We are now moving on to part 3.
Some fractions have decimal forms that repeat without end. You can use rounding to approximate these decimals.
So we're going to write 2/3 as a decimal rounded to the nearest hundredth. There's 4 steps, and here's the first one. Write the fraction as a division problem. 2/3 is going to be 2 divided by 3. Step 2, we need to add that decimal point and a 0 so that we can figure out how many times 3 goes into 20, because 3 cannot just go into 2. So we added 0.0. Then we divide. 3 can go into 26 times. That's 18, and we subtract 2. What we then find out if we continue going is we will always say 3 can go into 20. 6 times subtract 20 minus 18. We can continue going. You'll always have 2 as a remainder, and no matter how many zeros you bring down, you'll always have 2 as a remainder, which makes up here a 6 repeating. So it says the decimal is repeating. 6 is greater than 5, so round the decimal to 0.67, or 0 and 67 hundredths. Moving on with the example problem.
Lake Superior contains about 1/9 of the world's fresh surface water. Write 1/9 as a decimal rounded to the nearest hundredth.
So 1/9 as a decimal, we're taking 1 divided by 9. 9 cannot go into 1, so I have to add my decimal point and the 0. It's a place value holder. I'm not changing the value whatsoever. 9 can go into 10 one time. That gives me 9. 10 minus 9 is 1. If I continued going with this, I would add another 0 at the end, not changing the value at all. Drop it down. It's a 10, so 9 can go into 10 one time. I would put a 9 right here. Subtract. I'm left with 1. I would have to add a 0 and drop it. Again, 9 can go into 10 one time, which would give me 9. Subtract 1. As you can see, this pattern will keep going, keep going, keep going. My decimal point goes straight up in my answer, and I'm going to have 0.111111. It will never ever stop. So when it says write 1/9 as a decimal rounded to the nearest hundredth, I want to find my hundredth place value. So we have tens, hundredths, thousandths. So this middle one is my hundredths place value. If this is the one that I'm rounding to, I want to look at the one after it. If it's 4 and below, this number stays the same. If it's 5 and above, this would round up. So since 1 is less than 5, this rounds to just 11 hundredths. And that would be our answer.
The average depth of Lake Michigan, the second largest Great Lake, is about 4/7 of the average depth of Lake Superior. Write 4/7 as a decimal rounded to the nearest hundredth.
When you divide out 4/7, you're going to get one of these answers. The correct answer is B. If we divided 4 divided by 7, we would get 57 hundredths. Here's our last and final got it problem.
When writing a fraction as a decimal, why does it make sense to round the decimal when you see that the decimal is beginning to repeat?
Here is a sample answer for this got it problem. Make sure that you're trying your hardest. If you have any questions, be sure to ask me about them. We can work it through in class together. If you're doing this at home and you have an immediate question, you can always email me and I can try to get back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, ask me in class, ask me during lunch, ask me during ENR. Whenever we can find a time, I would love to help you.